Welcome back. This is episode 13 of the Revenue Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Robert Cornish, and I'm going to be talking about systematize your success. So obviously it's the brand new year, 2022. Happy New Year. I've been talking about goals recently, and just want to dive into this a little bit. So with goals, I'm an avid writer of goals. I have for years and years. And they're great. I've met people who don't do it. I always find that strange. People who don't write down their goals, or even sometimes people just write them down on their computer or on their iPhone or something like that. That's fine. You can definitely do that. There is 100% something magical about taking pen to paper and writing down the goals physically on paper. I don't know why. I definitely know that it matters. But I have a moleskin and I write down my goals on my moleskin. I usually write them down at the back of the journal, and then I reflect on them throughout the year. It's interesting though, when you write down your goals and you look back 2 or 3 years, you may find that a goal that you're gunning for the year took 2 or 3 years to accomplish, and you look back and you got it done. I generally get the goals done that I wrote down, but it may take longer than I want. Here's why I think it takes longer than you want, and something you can do about it. And I've this is from 20 years of experience of writing goals. I would encourage you to drill them down. And by that, I mean engineering them step by step. So when you look at a goal and you look at writing them down on paper and you say, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, I'm going to go run a marathon, or I'm going to run my first 5K, or I'm going to accomplish this revenue goal, or whatever it is. You got to engineer that goal. You got to look at it and go, cool, let's look at the end of that goal, from the very end of that goal, and work backwards. What would it take? What happens right before you attain that goal? What happens right before that? What happens right before that? Before that, before that, before that, before that. Dice it up so you have all those exact steps. If you were running a marathon, you might say, okay, I ran a marathon. Cool, what happened right before that? I had my training or nutrition or whatever it was. What happened before that? I did my stretching. What happened before that? It was like the week before. And what happened before that? Training, doing the marathon training plan. What happened before that? Diet, exercise, all that kind of stuff. What happened before that? Deciding, deciding to run a marathon. What happened before setting the date, or deciding, then setting the date type thing. Like, you start looking at all of those things, and if you were to engineer it and write them all down, and then you have a plan. You have a recipe. You have an action plan to go and do it, and the likelihood of pulling off that goal is much greater. Now, I think a lot of us don't do that, what I just said, because it's kind of annoying. It's tedious. It's work. It's thinking work. It's doing work. It's a mental exercise. And if you think about it, if you had 10 or 15 or 20 top goals for this year, it's like, okay, well, geez, that's a lot of things to do, but it is worth it. Think about your goals that way. If you really want them, if you really want to do it, take it seriously. Writing down is a good step. There's a good chance, if you write it down, there's a good chance you're going to get it done. Over 20 years, I've found that when I write goals down, I know I'm going to do them. I know they're going to get accomplished. The question is, when are they going to get accomplished? And that's the part that annoys me. When are they going to get accomplished? Is it now? Is it 3 years from now? If you want to get them done and you want to compress the time and take the time out of it, engineer your goals. Engineer, break them down, and then give it a deadline, give it a timeline, and go and execute the living you-know-what out of that thing, right? Because often they take longer than they should, and you can control that. You can compress them, right? But you do have to do the extra work. It goes beyond just writing goals. You got to engineer them step by step. And then you got to do it. You got to execute. You got to go and take action. You got to go do it. But definitely write them down. Put pen to paper. I'd encourage you to do that. I don't know. There's something magical about it. You can ask any successful person, literally anybody who's, successful in however you want to frame success. But go ask them. You'll see. A lot of them write pen to paper. So it's work, it's tedious, but it is worth it. And you can always, once you write it pen to paper, you can always do the planning, the engineering step by typing it all up that way if you want to, or you could just write it out. But definitely writing down the goals pen to paper. The other thing, I'm I'm thinking about and looking at, and this is something we did in 2020. But if you want to be successful and you really want to accomplish certain things, it has to go beyond just goal making, even engineering those steps, but also systematize your day. Systematize your day to make a routine that systematizes progress so you can systematize your success. All right, so what does that mean? Well, it's like you know what your day could and should look like. You know what you need to do, but you need to build a routine. You need to build a successful routine. So in 2020, when the pandemic hit, for example, related to my agency, we systematized the day to break down things like how many phone calls will we make per day, how many one-to-one emails will we make per day, how many Zoom calls will we set up per day, what would we do to systematize the day, how many proposals out, what's the dollar figure of those proposals out, and you can build out a successful framework and stack your calendar to make it be a certain way. And so when you show up every single day, you're just doing what you need to do, and following your system, following your routine in order to get closer and closer to your goal, and just really dedicate yourself to that routine, that system, which will get you progress and which will create the outcomes that you want. But you don't want to rely on these thinking type systems like, oh, geez, now I'm supposed to, and what about this and what about that? You don't want to rely on those kinds of things, because then things are going to drop out. You're not going to do certain things. You're going to forget about certain things, and it's not going to get you there. And then you're going to run into this whole ebb and flow thing. So look at your day, take your goals, look at where you're trying to go. What are your objectives? What are you trying to accomplish? And then systematize your day, build a routine every single day, every single week, every single month if you want to. Build it out, put it in your calendar, and have something that's repeatable that you can do every single day. And the other thing just is something to look at. Anytime you get distracted or not focused, I want you to take a look at this. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to do? Get that in your mind. Get a vision of that. What are you trying to do? Write that down. Anytime you get distracted, what am I trying to do? Write that down. Focus on that. And then get back to the mission, get back on point to what you're supposed to be doing. It's going to help you stay focused. Anytime you get distracted, ask yourself, what am I trying to do? Good. Get a vision of what you're trying to do. Write that down. Get back on the mission, right? Because we all get distracted. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of things, especially with social media and everything going on today, and notifications and distractions. But keep in mind, what are you trying to do? Where are you trying to go? Stay focused on that, and then get back to your routine, get back to your system, and stay on point. And the other thing is also, in addition to what are you trying to do, what are your ambitions? Keep focused on those things, because life will distract you off course. It's sort of rigged that way to sort of take you off course of your ambitions and your missions. What's your ambitions? What are you trying to do? Right? And then the other thing to look at is, how bad do you want it? That's the other thing, because you can write goals, you can know what you're trying to do, you can have your ambitions, but how bad do you want it? And what are you willing to do to get it? You know, you got to be looking at that going, okay, all right, what am I willing to do? How bad do I want it? Because maybe you don't want it bad enough. Or maybe you haven't acknowledged how bad you want it, so you can really look at it and go, geez, I really do want to accomplish this. Because at the end of the day, you know, when life is over, at the end of the day, you don't want to be looking back, oh, shoot, I wish I did this, wish I did that. You know, I lost both my parents in 2019 and 2020. I lost both my parents, and that was interesting. To say it lightly, of course, but from a perspective standpoint, it was interesting for me, because it was like, it was traumatizing, to be honest. It was awful, but it was interesting from the standpoint of perspective and what that meant to me, and looking at just life in general, and putting a lot of things in perspective, and kind of looking at time, and it's a little morbid, but it did spark something inside of me that made me feel a little bit more urgent, or a lot more urgent, and always have that. It's still right now to this day, it's always sort of running in the background for me. Like when I think about time and I think about certain things, there's an urgency that's running in the background for me all the time because of that event. And when you look at how bad do you want it, what are your ambitions, just know this one thing: you really don't have all the time in the world. So when I hear people talk about, sometimes you hear people be patient, all this kind of stuff, I want to throw up in my mouth because I think it's ridiculous, personally. I think it's utterly ridiculous, honestly. It's okay not to be patient, right? It's okay to be urgent. It's okay to try and compress time. You don't need to be patient because people tell you to be patient. The other thing to look at is reflect on last year. What worked? Out of everything that you did last year, what worked? Write those down. Focus on that and magnify what worked. Right? A lot of people look at what didn't work or the problems they ran into. I tend to ignore those things. I look at what worked. I focus on that. What do we do? Let's amplify that. Last year we had our highest ever year for the company in our 14-year history. And we had our highest ever month in our history in November. And I think it's great. I'm super happy about that. And what I'll do is I'll look at what worked. I'm going to note those down and move on to amplify and expand those things. And then, thread those into what our goals are for 2022. But challenge yourself and get a little uncomfortable. Recently I signed up for 2 programs already, 2 different programs. And, I wasn't even thinking about the bandwidth or how much time I have or whatever. I just was like, yeah, let's do it. I want to grow in 2022. Let's do it. And I'm already feeling a little time crunched, but, I plan to do 2 more various courses. I did a Columbia Business School course recently and a Disney Institute course. I plan to do 2 more of those. I have some reading targets that I'm trying to do. I have fitness targets I'm trying to do. I plan to do all those things, and I plan to push myself. And pushing yourself requires that you're uncomfortable, because we grow when we're uncomfortable. Weightlifting is uncomfortable. Reading can be uncomfortable to some degree. Going for runs can be uncomfortable. Doing things, pushing yourself and expanding in business can be uncomfortable. We were talking about doing some stuff with our company, and it may require a loan to do something that I want to do, which I don't like loans. We don't have any debt. So I find that uncomfortable, but I really want to do this thing that we're talking about. So you have to get uncomfortable. You have to be willing to be uncomfortable in order to grow. And so I plan to push myself, and I hope you will as well. Lastly, I'll just say, over the break, I thought about the one thing I want to focus on more than anything else this year for my company. And for me, that thing is our craft, the work. I want to be dedicated to the work, to make it great, the best possible products and services that we can deliver, world class. That's what I admire in great companies. We've been on a mission to focus on our work for a while, and we're going to go all in on that in 2022. And anyway, I thought I would read a post I wrote in 2018 on this and just share it with you here. A few years ago, I read a quote from Mark Parker, the CEO of Nike, that he had a phone call with Steve Jobs and asked advice for how to improve Nike. And Steve's reply was this: "Well, just one thing," said Jobs. "Nike makes some of the best products in the world, products that you lust after. But you also make a lot of crap. Just get rid of the crappy stuff and focus on the good stuff." Mark waited for a chuckle from Steve, but he didn't laugh. He was serious, and he was right. There's this quote from Stephen Covey that goes like this: "The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing." People and companies lose sight of it along the way sometimes. Your craft and caliber of the products you produce is everything. Build a company that builds incredible products. Just chasing growth or profit can lead to a revenue-hungry, passionless, mediocre company that's lost its way. Focus on chasing greatness. Start with great products and work through to attain great talent, great marketing, great sales, and a great organization. It's easy to market and sell a great product. In fact, they nearly sell themselves. It's very hard to market and sell a crappy product. Very hard. It's tough to get your heart in it and your people behind it. So I hope you have a great 2022, but as you and I both know, it will be great because you make it great. Push yourself and chase greatness.